everyone, it's Ileana and I have a card to share with you today. I really liked the back of this penny black dressed in snow slapstick stamp, and so I wanted to try to recreate that. So I am starting off with some Gina K layering paper, and I'm just going to add some of my anti-static powder tool onto it just so that nothing sticks to it when I'm ready to emboss. I'm just checking to see where on the grid lines the pattern of the stamp is. That way I can adhere my paper down to it. And I'm using some purple tape simply because the stamp is bigger than an A2 card size. It's taller, but it's narrower. So what I did was I started off by stamping the entire stamp in Paper Tray Ink Ocean Tide. And I went ahead and did that because the dark chocolate that I use for the tree will cover up any of the green ink that I stamped initially. This way I can see the pattern of the stamp as I'm trying to cover up the areas that should be brown. And I switch back and forth between my Tombow markers and my mini ink cubes. What I'm doing now is I'm adding a little bit of the pine feather ink, and I'm using this little brush that comes in the Picket Fence Life Changing Brushes. It has about 10 brushes, I believe, and I'm using the smallest one, and I'm just using it to add some detail, some brush strokes to the evergreens, just so that it's not a solid color. That way it gives the tree a little bit of depth. And on the other side, there's a little bit of evergreen on there, but I don't want it to be very dark, and so I'm just softening up that ink with the small brush. Now I'm going back and I'm adding the branches, and I'm using the edge of my Tombow marker. What I don't realize is that my marker is very dry and I'm not getting much color, and so I'm trying to figure out how I can add more color to it. And so I'm going to pull out a little scratch piece of paper, and it's going to show you that it's really dry. It's not even putting out much. So I dipped it in just a little bit of water. Actually, I changed colors first. I used a different color. The first color was 879, and then I switched to the 969. But I got frustrated. I wanted it darker, so I dipped my darker marker in a little bit of water, and it worked for a little while, and then it just got too light. Even after I dipped it a second time, it was just a lighter shade of brown. What I ended up doing was I pulled out my dark chocolate reinker from Paper Tray ink, and I just put one little drop into this little bowl, and I'm just going to dip my marker into it, and that's going to give me enough color to add the brown to my tree. I probably could have used my life-changing brush, but I really didn't want to go rinse it out and wait for it to dry, so I just decided to dip my marker into the reinker. I'm going to keep working with it until I color all the branches. Once I'm happy with all the color I laid down, I'm just going to take my tidy towel and I'm just going to wash off my stamp. My towel is a little bit too damp and it's leaving some puddles, and so I'm just going to take this microfiber towel from Ink on 3 and I'm just going to wipe away that extra bit of moisture. The towel doesn't leave any kind of lint or anything behind. I'm just going to take some of my Versamarker, I'm sorry, it's not Versamark, it is Ink on 3 embossing ink, and I'm just going to add a couple of layers of the embossing ink so that I can add my Brutus Monroe ICICLE clear embossing powder. This is going to seal in all those colors. That way I could do some ink blending over the top and it won't muddy up my image. Once it's all heat set, I'm going to take a Wow embossing marker and I'm just going to color in where it appears that the snow is on the trees. There are gaps in the stamp, and without doing this, when I do ink blending, it will add color there, and so I want to protect those places. So I'm just adding some embossing powder with the help of this embossing marker. So it just puts in enough of the sticky ink to hold the embossing powder so that you could melt it with your heat gun. And once it's all complete, I'm going to do some ink blending. So I'm going to mask off the bottom of the card so that I don't get any ink down where the snowbank is. I'm going to use my life-changing brushes from Picket Fence, and I have to tell you, I really, really love these brushes. With the combination of the Gina K paper, you get such a creamy, smooth blending. It's unbelievable. I do recommend these brushes, and I did end up getting a few sets. Now for the top of the panel, I'm going to use this big brush. This is the biggest brush that comes in the set, and I'm just going to do some ink blending, and I don't want to get too close to the yellow, otherwise it's going to turn to green. And I started off with tumbled glass, and then I went to broken china just to add a little bit more darkness. Once I'm completely done with all of this, I'm going to take my microfiber towel and I'm going to wipe away any of the residue that is on top of the panel. The embossing will resist the distress oxide, and so you'll be able to see where the snow is on the entire panel. I'm going to take the second largest rectangle from the Infinity die set from Hero Arts, and I'm going to cut out my panel. Once I have that all done, I'm going to add a Merry Christmas sentiment, and that sentiment comes from the Concord and Ninth Joyful Noel stamp set. It is a dainty little Merry Christmas that fits perfect on the very bottom of my card. And I will mount that onto a piece of foam and add it onto a card base. I also sprayed some Shimmer Sparkle from Imagine Crafts onto my panel, and I was careful not to get any splotches on it because I just wanted it to be a sheer little shimmer. And that is my card. Thanks so much for sticking to the very end. I hope you enjoyed this card. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to hit the subscribe. Have a great day.